What is up, Thrive fam? CJ Finley here again with another episode of the Thrive on Life podcast. And today I have one of the coolest people that I get to work with on a daily basis, Miss Erin Damm. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. I'm glad you didn't call me awesome, so I can actually let my dad listen to this because he hates the word awesome.
What does he have against
I don't
awesome?
know. He just doesn't like that word, but as soon as you said cool instead of awesome, I'm like, I have to say that.
I was trying to think like what word. There's a lot of words that I could use to describe you, but I feel like what we're going to get into right off the bat, which is your IG handle, your tagline, wander, and then your name, Erin, and then Damm. So wanderindamm. It's something that I feel like you portray this ability to travel and do a bunch of different things. Like right before you came on this episode, you were literally talking about how you woke up and you went climbing, and then you taught a yoga class, and now you're doing a podcast. And then after this, I'm sure you're off to do some more cool stuff, which we'll get into later in this episode. But I wanted to start off with, how did you come up with that tagline?
So kind of a funny story. My tagline originally was Yogi E-Run because I used to run ultra marathons and halves and all that fun stuff and used to love it. I run still, but not really. And then I finally got to a point, and I'm a yoga teacher, got to a point where I'm like, that's not really accurate anymore. So it actually was wandering yoga gal for a little bit. And then I was with Allison Voidovich, who's a good friend of mine. She's also been on your podcast. And she was like, wanderindamm actually works really well. So, because I love to just go do lots of things and explore. And, but yeah, my name is Erin Damm. Everyone thinks it's Damm, but 36 years of hearing that.
What ethnicity is that?
It's German.
German.
Yep,
Sweet.
German. So actually, 3 generations ago, we've done the whole thing. My grandpa knows, my 90-year-old grandfather is still alive, and he'll tell these stories over and over again. When they came over and started working in I want to say it was the coal mines, but I might be wrong on that, in LaSalle, Peru, Illinois, there was like 15 letters in our last name. I couldn't tell you what it was, but they shortened it to Damm eventually.
Well, it makes for a kick-ass name and a kick-ass tagline. What is the craziest place that you've wandered to, that you found yourself wandering to?
That's such a loaded question because I've done a lot of crazy stuff, and people will tell you that while they're talking to me, I'll just tell a story and they'll be like, "How are you alive?" So recently, my friend Angie and I went to Glacier, Yellowstone, and the Grand Tetons, and we backpacked. We backcountry camped at Glacier in the No Name Lake campground. And they're like, "Oh, there's been bears around and all this stuff." So we're backcountry camping. Angie can barely throw our food bag over they have like a 25-foot pole that they put up that you're supposed to throw your food bag over. And we took the minimum because we're both like, ooh, bears. And when we were coming back from using the outhouse, because they do have an outhouse out there, both of us step in bear scat. So like fresh, like this bear is somewhere near us. But luckily we never saw it, and then we slept in the cold. And
did you have anything to defend yourselves if you did see a bear?
Bear spray.
Okay.
This random guy gave us 4 canisters of bear spray, and of course we're carrying all 4 of them. Angie's same size as me. She's awesome. And then in that same trip, we were doing like a 10-mile hike at the Grand Tetons. I can't remember the name of it. And we're coming back, and we had stopped to pee in the woods behind a rock, as one does, but far off the path and cover it, leave no trace. And we come out, and there's this big group of people, and this guy is like filming, and he looks at us and he goes, "Did you see the grizzly?" And neither one of us had. Apparently, like 30 seconds before we came out, a grizzly had walked in on that same path. Yeah. So, but did you die is a really, really good estimate of my life.
Yeah, I mean, but to me, when you say that, I feel like you have to live to get to the point to say like, all right, okay, I've had some near-death experiences. Now, where in the course of your life did you have the ability to just go out and have the courage and the confidence to do something like camp where there's grizzlies? Because that's going to parlay into what we talk about later here on the episode, more of business and the operation side of things, where being able to step out into the unknown literally is what you do every day in the world of business if you're trying to scale a business. doing it in the wilderness is obviously a little bit more dangerous, it sounds like. Where in your life did that start? Like, where did you gain that courage and that confidence to do that?
Well, I'm an oldest child, so, you learn to just kind of do
Me
your
too.
thing. Yeah. Oldest of four. I have two younger sisters and a younger brother. Very much a millennial, was babysitting other people's kids at like 10 years old. So my parents and my grandparents and my family are very big on pave your own path, figure out your own shit. We're here for you. We love you. We support you. But even my dad has said, I don't understand how she can do that. I moved to Austin not knowing a soul. Like I have an aunt 2 hours away, but when I moved here, I didn't know anybody. I met someone at like a training that I did, and they're like, oh, I know a bunch of people. Here's the context. So I reached out, and I still have friends that I met through them. So it's just one of those things where I was told, just go do your thing. The right people will find you. And I have a grandfather who traveled all the time, and we went camping when I was a kid and all of that stuff. So I think it's just been a culmination of all those things.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had an environment that kind of was a positive reinforcement in accruing those traits.
Yeah.
Which I feel like a lot of people don't have. They have the opposite, where they have the scarcity mindset ingrained in them. Where has kind of like having the courage or confidence hurt you? Because you maybe that bear could have found you, right?
It could have,
yeah,
but it didn't. I'm here talking.
The flip
to you.
side of this question is, and I know what it's like to be the firstborn, and then kind of like your parents are figuring things out with you, and you kind of have this I want to do it myself mentality, but that also can backfire in certain circumstances. So in a point in your life, where do you feel like that kind of backfired on you?
That's a really good question. I mean, I know I've definitely had jobs where I was very much considered employee, you do what I say. And I've had to either leave or been let go because, the people in charge were not happy with that. A very specific example is when I was in college, I definitely got put in my place in a class because I was going way off what they would have considered the rails. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to fail you because you're not following what, in colleges usually be really creative, but this particular professor, it's usually situations where people are threatened by that, as my sister would put it, too much. And it's so cool with my nieces. My sisters are like, if it wasn't for you and doing the things you do, I don't think I'd be able to handle my daughter. And my nieces are the coolest people I've ever met. So it's so cool that they're like, it's so awesome that they're like, and now I'm saying awesome. They're saying you
Dad,
are
you didn't hear that.
Yeah, no, he'll be all right. He probably won't even listen to this, knowing that.
Oh, he's got to. We got to get him to
I
listen.
know. My mom will make him. She has Spotify. She uses my family plan. But my sisters, hearing that if it wasn't for the example that I lead and that I go do all these things and I'm not afraid to take these chances, that my sisters are more, they feel more capable of letting their daughters, knowing that it's safe and that they can go do it because they've seen it.
Do you have a specific example for them? Because I feel like anybody listening as parents, like this is enlightening for, we want to do our best at like helping provide a space for our children to become their own human being, but then also like the human nature to kick in to just control things and do it our way is very real. Yeah. So it's cool to hear that your sister's kind of like opening up and allowing them to go on their own path. But I'd love for you to kind of dial into what does that actually look like for them?
Yeah. So my niece Rayanne, she is a little spitfire. She is full Leo. I'm nerdy. I love astrology. Full Leo and Sag. The girl can burn you with a word. And she has pretty severe anxiety and she loves making videos and singing. And her mom lets her do that. She makes her do it on private mode.
Yeah.
And then Mariah is a type 1 diabetic. So, of course the first year was rough, but my sister has since gotten a lot more open with letting her go do things where she's not around and all of that, and learning to manage that and to allow them to just be themselves. Because, in my generation and yours, you're a little younger than me, but our parents didn't want to, have the weird kid. But I was lucky that my mom let me be pretty weird to a point.
How would you define weird? What does weird look like?
I'm trying to think of specific examples. I was just very loud and I would tell you what I thought and just beyond the sit and do what everyone says kid. Like I was always thinking out of the box and I did really well in school because I could still sit and do what they told me.
How did that show up in your friendships? Like, what were your friendships like if you're the weird kid?
I would say that I found my people when I was older. I don't have a ton of friends from when I was really young. Got a couple guy friends I've known for a long time, but most of my friends I met in my late teens or by college. And I have friends that I could call them tomorrow and they'd show up. So it's really that idea of you find your people. They're going to gravitate to you once you understand that be yourself. And
I
it's
mean,
just such
that's
a cool
so
way to
hard
be.
though.
Yeah.
Like when you're younger, it's awesome to hear you say that. There's the word awesome again.
I tricked you. Now we're going to say it a lot.
It's very intriguing to hear you say that
Yes.
because from where I grew up and just understanding myself was just something that was very hard to do. Had to show up. I felt like I had to show up in a certain type of way at all times, whether it was like on the sports field or in the classroom. And that was being a male. I can't imagine like for females, it's like 10x amplified. So were there any times where showing up like that, like hurt?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of my teen years crying and going into my own little world because somebody didn't like me or said I was being weird, but I still would express myself when I was alone or when I was with my family. And I've had multiple conversations with my siblings and even like my best friend, who I met when I was 19 and she was 16. So we've been friends a long time. And we have this conversation all the time, how Gen Z and the alpha generation are so much more prepared to be able to express themselves because their parents are more aware of it. Like my parents were not the norm for typical boomer parents. I know that's horrible to say that, but
I mean, that's just,
and
yeah.
my mom has even said, I wish that I wouldn't have held you back on certain things. And I'm like, well, I don't see it. We don't remember things the way other people remember things too. I'm like, I felt like you let me do everything I wanted to do as a kid or as a teenager or as an adult. I mean, they supported me in my first 2 retreats. My mom and dad both went. And my mom's like, I really wish we could go to Thailand with you, but they watch all my nieces and nephews now, so it's a little harder.
Yeah, it's such a, now that I'm going to be a father, it's such an interesting thing because you can only do what you think is right in the moment. And then you're only given so much information to kind of articulate what is right. And for us growing up in our generation, we're the last generation that knows what it's like to be kids without the internet. Well, at least dial up, right? Like that, I don't consider that the internet. Like,
I mean, I think I was 12 or 13 before we had
and we
dial up in the house. So.
And we didn't have phones. So we know what it was like. And I think that has allowed me to step into forgiveness a little bit of, okay, if I was in a time zone of the world where there was no internet and you can't really have easy access to information. So in any given moment, you're trying to make decisions. You don't really have a good selection of advice. And most people back then would just ask the people closest to them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best advice or the best decision that you should make. It's biased.
Yeah.
So granting them the forgiveness of that. But then what infuriates me in today's day and age is people have this access to this information and they have the ability to share stories like you're doing with your family, and showcase examples where we can have offspring that have new opportunities compared to us. So it's really cool to hear you talk about that with your sister and her children, because I think that's more of what the world needs. We need more people wandering. And I'm always somebody that likes to be practical, to give people tips. So if they're listening to this and they're like, yeah, I've always wanted to take that trip, or I've wanted to kind of be a little bit more weird. I want to just put myself out there a little bit more. How do they go about doing so? Like, what would the first step be for that person?
So I did a lot of, my family took trips. I had grandparents that didn't live close to home. So like I went to North Carolina and Indiana and I feel like Florida when I was really young. There's a lot of places that I've been that I'm going to again that I forgot I went to because my parents did make sure that we traveled a lot, that we saw as much as we can. We drove everywhere. I mean, we're Midwesterners. 10-hour drive is an easy drive
I
for
mean,
us.
and if you have
There
three
was
other siblings,
there would have been 6 of us.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
8
an
if my
expensive
grandparents
plane
went.
flight.
We definitely had an econo van, like the big red van. I
I
think
could see it.
yeah, that's what I learned to drive on
I love
actually. And then I drove a truck for 3 years. But basically it's just trusting yourself to do it. I've had people who've taken their first trips with me out of the country or to a national park. And for me, and also the affordability of it, I know that's always a thing. I became really good at fundraising when I was younger. Um, whether that was convincing my teachers to sell chocolate and give me the profit on it in their classes, or doing like Girl Scouts, or I'm trying to think, funding my own travel through a retreat company because, I didn't have the salary 5 years ago to be able to afford it like I can now. But I would say the majority of my travel has happened in my late 20s and 30s, just because that's when I became able to really have the time and the funding. But I would never tell anyone not to do it earlier. If you have the time, if you have the ability, go explore the world. I have how old is Kaylee now? She's 22, I believe. She went to Thailand for like 3 months by herself a few years ago, like before she started college. And I'm like, that is so fucking cool that my cousin let her go. So it's just, it's one of those things where it's like, if you get the opportunity, take it, because one choice can completely change your life. Like, I've been in Austin almost 8 years. And if I had not taken that job that I took at the nonprofit to come down here, I would not have most of the travel I have or the people that I've become friends with.
How do you plan a trip, and how do you understand what tools you'll need for a trip?
So with the pandemic, it's become very different for me. I usually pick a place, buy a flight for myself, get the rental, and then figure it out. And I've found friends who are really willing to do that. But when it comes to the actual retreats, I picked the place, reached out to places, decided on one, and then we started to market and all of that in the past for the 3 we did in the past. This one was a little bit different, the one we're having in Thailand, or I'm doing in Thailand. My business partner is not going with me, unfortunately. But it's really been a matter of, I'm like, I want to go there, and I figure out a way to do it. So I like see the posts that I made on Facebook 6 years ago where I'm like, I want to lead a retreat with another yoga teacher in Costa Rica. And it ended up being Guatemala, but it worked. It's pretty much right next to each other. And then we both were like, we want to lead one in Greece. So we ended up in Greece in 2019. And
do you just like find something online that shows like, I want to go to this place, or like what calls you to a specific point?
So with Costa Rica, I'd been there a couple times. I did my teacher training there for yoga. I am now 500-hour ERYT. I have so many letters behind my last name. Basically, I can teach teachers, and I've taught a lot of yoga. And I'm prenatal and child certified because I like to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. But with that one, it was like, Costa Rica's my jam. I like Central America. I hadn't really thought I wanted to go outside the box and go to Europe or to Asia or wherever. And then I reached out to Clarissa, who is my business partner, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this retreat. Are you interested? And I mean, I still have those Facebook messages, which is kind of the cool thing about social media, is it sometimes stays. Sometimes they tell you it doesn't exist anymore. And it just kind of happened from there. We took 21 people to Guatemala, and I think we had 15 in Greece. So, and I'm going to Thailand with maybe a couple people. I still got like 3 spots open.
So much to dissect. There's so many ways I can go.
Yeah, I know, right?
You've been mentioning the retreats a couple of times, and it's something that I've both done and I was also a guest at retreats before, and they always leave me with a different impression every time I leave. And for you, what are some of the best pieces of you that have accrued because you've been a host of these retreats?
I mean, I would say definitely the ability to do lots of different things and make a cohesive event or at a cohesive retreat. I know that those skills definitely came into our event. And also being able to just meet people where they are, because everyone who comes to a retreat is at a completely different space and you don't know where they are. I mean, you can interview them before, you can do the pre-intake, all of that. But until you get there and you get in the energy of the person, which is why in-person is so important. Like online's cool, and I'm glad that it's an offering for a lot of things. But in person, you don't know where someone is until you're there with them. And being able to adjust and meet people where they are, but still be true to yourself is such a skill that I picked up from that. Because you've got people all different ages, all different levels of abilities, all different places in life. Like I've had people who had recently lost a job or who were going through different transitions. And it's just so interesting how you learn to meet them and to, get their story. Cause that's really what it comes down to is, we have so many people in our network that it's the story. It's the story. Ultimately, yeah, it is, because that's when it's going to get them to come to another retreat or reach out to you when things, they need something, not need isn't the right word, but they would like advice in the future. Cause I still talk to most of the people that have come to my retreats and they check in, and it's just kind of a cool thing. One of the girls, so I didn't lead this one, I assisted on it in Utah in 2021. One of the girls and I are probably going to go do a road trip in July because she's like, I'm going to take a week off. You want to do it? And I'm like, I'm down. So
what are some of the pain points that people struggle with when they seek going on a retreat? Because I feel like there's so many people out there that need them that never go on them because they just lack the self-awareness to understand how it could be helpful for them.
Yeah. Cost is often a big one. And I try to make them as little as I can with still making the experience worth it. I like to book nicer places to go just because it's, one, safety in certain countries and certain areas. And you want to make sure the food's good too, because I'm a big foodie. The other one is I get a lot is I can't get the time off work, but that's more of fear because most of the time people, if you ask, they're going to let you have the time off, especially if you don't take a lot of time off. And if you do not get time off, you probably should look for another job because getting time to be able to do experiences and spend time with yourself or take mental health days is so important.
It makes you better at your work.
Yeah.
So let's flip right into that. How has both wandering on your own and hosting, how has that helped you in business?
So definitely understanding the financial side of things. That's the huge one. And understanding where it's okay to splurge a little, but also maybe not so much. And where, I am a big fuck it, let's go kind of person, but I also am a giant Capricorn. And if I can't afford it and I'm going to be paying it 5 months from now, I will not go. So I make sure that I space them. So that's a thing. The other thing that I really think has helped is that meeting people where they are and just that, what did you use? It wasn't multitask. What was the word you
Multi-manage.
used? And just being able to multi-manage and finding the people that can do it with you that fill in the spots that you are not the most skilled at. So I'm not, marketing is cool. I understand it. I understand social media, but I like to let other people do it. I like to delegate that one.
Yeah. So before we jumped on here, just to give people some background and context, we were talking about like multitasking, and I view Erin as somebody that has a really good ability to understand what's going on in not just one business, but multiple businesses, and then also what's going on with multiple people and diverse groups of people all at the same time. And I didn't like the word multitask when I was using it. I was looking for another word because technically, like, your focus has to be on one thing at a time. But when it comes to managing things, you can set up processes and systems and understand how to manage different projects and different people all at the same time. That you do have a capability of doing, and just watching you kind of flourish in that role has been really awesome and enlightening to me, and just understanding that is not what I want to do. I'm pretty good when it comes to managing a specific thing. In specific parts of different things. But when it comes to the entirety, It's not something that it's not that I couldn't do it. It's just not where I'm strong at. I like to live in the clouds a little bit, and that kind of hurts when you're trying to think of like small little things that need to get done on a daily basis. Has that always been the case for you? What, like going through school and college, were you that type of person that was always managing multiple things, or is it something that you grew into after going on your trips and after hosting different things?
I definitely honed that skill with all of those things. But I think ultimately I kind of always have. I've always been an event planner. I've always done fellowship type stuff. And being able to manage people really does, talking with my hands, whacking things, really does require that ability to do all of the things, but with, I'm trying to think of the word here, with intention. So you're not just doing a bunch of stuff all at once. You're doing it in a way that it will lead to what your ultimate goal is. And whether that's starting to delegate but still checking in, or physically doing it yourself, or finding people that are really skilled in it so that you don't have to do the thing that you're not great at.
What was it like working in nonprofit space?
So I really enjoyed nonprofit, a lot of networking. I like fundraising. So for me, like constantly being out there talking to people, raising funds. I love the close. So it was fun when you'd be able to close and be like, I just got that huge sponsorship or that event or that. So we did the Austin Marathon. We would be one of the fundraisers for that. We would get people to run for us, and they would fundraise it for us. We called them fund runners. I think they're still doing that. I just got an email from their executive director, and I'm like, I should donate to this.
Yeah, one of my friends, Devin Levesque, is running in the marathon, and then he's starting last, and every person that he passes.
He's the pacer, or what do they call it?
Well, he runs last. He starts last, and then every person that he passes is a certain amount of money is raised from sponsors.
I can't remember what they called that, but yeah, they started that the year that I got the organization into it, which is, one of the things I definitely learned in nonprofit was ask forgiveness, not permission, because if you don't take the chance and maybe get in as one of those.
Do you have a practical example for that?
Oh yeah. I definitely didn't ask permission to submit us to be in the Austin Gives Miles, which is the charity side of it. And when that happened, my boss was like happy, but also like, you didn't ask permission. I was like, no, because it would have taken longer and I needed to submit. So
I love that advice, because I mean, I have a huge one. Like, I wouldn't be here if I didn't do that. Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek talks about like this exact concept. And when I was living in Nashville and Erin was living in Houston, we were paying, obviously she was paying rent, and then I was paying rent in Nashville, and then we'd fly to each other. So I started thinking, like, it doesn't make sense. We're spending so much money. Like, I could literally quit my job and find a job that paid me way less, and it would still almost be like breaking even. So this doesn't make sense. So when my lease was up, instead of like asking my job to leave, only my floor manager there knew, because I wasn't going to show up. So I was just like, hey, like, just to let you know, this is what's going to happen. I'm just going to leave, and whatever the company chooses to do, like, that's on them. I'm okay with it. But I just ended up leaving that Nashville office. I drove to Houston, and then I told my actual boss, yeah, I'm living in Houston now. I'm going to work remote. And they were just like, yeah, not too happy about it. Asked me why didn't I tell them? And I was like, you would have said no straight up. And they actually let me work remote. It worked. So that was a huge learning lesson for me, because this was before I even started my own business, and just seeing that, like, I'm just going to go and like press go, and then I can always come back and kind of fix things. How did the journey of the nonprofit lead you to MSW?
Oh, that's a fun story. So my actual background is I did my undergrad in health and sports studies, or health and sports studies, human physiology is my actual concentration. And then I have minors in biochem, physics, and Spanish, because I love to learn. Did you have a life? I did, actually. I was in Alpha Phi Omega. I was the fellowship coordinator, ran for president. I am absolutely a person with ADHD that if I don't stay busy, I go crazy. It's a weird side of that, just FYI. I also bartended while doing that and worked full time at the hospital. So from there, I did a semester of med school, dropped out, didn't believe in the current medical society or medical thing. Still paying for that, but it's cool. And then I got my master's in behavioral science and health education. From there, I was bartending and serving, took a year to figure my shit out, and started teaching yoga around that time. And that has, obviously brought me into the wandering journey. Ended up in Austin because of the nonprofit, was with them until actually my last day was the day that the world shut down. So
why Austin?
Why Austin? Because I connected with the person who was in charge of that nonprofit, and it was a children's health education nonprofit. And at that time, that's really what I wanted to do. That's
How did you connect with them?
We were I applied. It was an AmeriCorps
So it was
position.
just random.
Yeah, it was random. I interviewed for like 8 or 9 jobs. I just needed to get the hell out of where I was. I was going through a pretty nasty breakup.
Where were you living at the time?
Illinois. I was living with my parents.
Okay.
So it was like 3 years after I'd graduated from college, 4 years. I don't know, something like that. Timelines are hard. And I just needed to get out. I have an aunt who lives 2 hours away. So I think I was just like, I want to move south. They don't get winter like we do. We get winter now. That was a joke. And so I ended up down here. I was bartending and working for the nonprofit and teaching because nonprofit doesn't teach anything or it doesn't pay anything, unfortunately. And I met Jonathan, who is Jonathan Mendoza, who's one of the founders of MSW. He was on my board of directors, actually, for the nonprofit. And we met and I don't remember this at all. John tells this story, and I'm like, okay, it probably happened. I mean, it's John. He remembers everything. It's insane. He's so brilliant. And he's like, that day I met you in that meeting, I knew I was going to work with you. And I helped plan like an opening thing for MSW in 2017, raise some money for Health Start, which is the nonprofit. And we kind of just kept in touch early 2020. And I actually just sent you guys that picture. You were there. Don't even remember you being there at that event.
Yeah, I ran some it's funny because Erin's mom flew in today, literally right before we press record here. And she was in town during that workshop.
Yeah, I don't
weird.
remember you being there, but I'm sure you were. Funny part about events, I black them out. I know they happened and things happened, but I'm like, oh, that's cool. So did that event in January of 2020. We'd kind of off and on. I think at that point I was only working part-time at the nonprofit. So we had off and on done some like little things together with MSW and me. At that point was like, I'm just going to consult and do my retreat business full-time, my yoga and retreat business. And then the world closed down the last day of the nonprofit and the day I was supposed to fly to Greece to teach at a conference. So I went on unemployment because I'd already applied because the bar that I was working pretty much full time at and I was making really good money, and I enjoy bartending because
what bar were you working at here?
The Tavern. I was there for 5 years almost. And I still talk to a lot of my regulars, still very good friends with them, but I was making good enough money to be like, okay, I can focus on this. Then the world shut down. I was on unemployment for about 5 months, and I can't remember exactly how I ended up coming in and like helping with the desk at MSW. And a month later, John's like, how do I get you full time? And we've gone from there.
Why do you think he said that?
Because our sales tripled.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Very good at sales and like interacting with people, even though now I don't do as much of that. I more work on back end type stuff, but we're going to be pushing more into the sales phase again. So I'm a little bit excited about getting to go out and do that now. So
yeah, I'm very excited. And just for the people listening, I'd love for you to kind of describe what MSW Lounge is, just because like that's where you kind of started with the company. Let's hear it from your side.
My side. So MSW Lounge, or Mendoza Sports and Wellness, Jonathan started it in around 2012, I believe. He was just taking on some private clients to be able to practice in the way he wanted, in a more functional medicine sort of way. The Lounge is a wellness clinic. We do blood work. Jonathan does consults and things like that. But we also have IVs and shots. And it's a really cool place to come co-work or get an IV or hang out and meet your next business partner, because the amount of those kind of relationships, or partner. Like, we have people that met through our company that are now like traveling the world together. And it's just so cool to hear about. So it's definitely that. It is a medical clinic, but it's so much more than that. And you get healthy. You get to do vitamins.
Yeah, together. And that's where it's just like, it's almost like your accountability buddy to health. And that's how I originally got involved, was just seeking people that were doing things a little bit differently and actually trying to understand the human body, not just make a assumption and then try to profit off of that assumption, because that's pretty much how the healthcare system is today. The beauty of the Lounge is you're going to go in there and you're going to have people debating what is what. Yeah. And that's what we really need to push the needle forward, not just in health, but in business, in life, in politics, and everything. You need that debate. And in a world where it's kind of diverging into who can yell louder, the Lounge provides a space where it's more just asking questions every single day.
And you're going to be heard too, because all of us have been through it. We all have our own health journey. None of us are like, I took one supplement and it worked perfectly. We've had to go through, I always say science is fuck around and find out. So is health. Like, you're going to try what you can, and health is so individual. And, I'm glad that it's going in that direction, because that's one of the reasons I dropped out of med school, is because not everybody's the same. Our bodies look different on the outside and on the inside. And I have family in traditional medicine.
Can you imagine going to med school and just being like to your teacher, like, why aren't we just fucking around and finding out?
I mean, that's all it is. I actually do have those conversations with friends who are in the traditional medical field, and they're like, oh, I love it when I can talk to you, because you're one of my only peers, I guess. We're on the colleagues, peers. We're on the same level. We have the same amount of education, if you look at it that way, and experience. I mean, I've been in and out of the health field since 2003. I was working in the hospital in 2003.
The easiest way I can dial into it is like, health isn't something you learn, it's something you do.
Yeah.
So like, the only way that you can fully understand and grasp is by doing something and then feeling the result. That's where science is. Like, you have a hypothesis, like, if I drink this thing, if I do this thing for my health, what does it feel like?
Yeah.
I can't have somebody tell me what it's going to do. And that's really the beauty of the Lounge, is that's what we literally are stating. Like, that's where How Do You Health stemmed from.
Yeah.
If you're listening, How Do You Health is the media side of the MSW brands, where that's where I kind of got involved. I can't believe is it like 2 years now?
Was it 2021 or 2020? Yeah, it was 2021. So 2 years.
Yeah,
I feel like it was like March of 2021. We all went to dinner, which is why it was so wild to me when I saw your name on that. Like, I think I knew who you were at that point, but I don't think we'd actually, we probably met at the event. But
I should go through my emails.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you look back at that.
I don't think Baldo or Doza hit me up to do that event. I think was it you that was like getting the people to
probably they probably gave me a list of people and I just went to town on it.
Yeah,
because I don't mind warm, cold, whatever. I'll call people, I'll email people.
Yeah, Yash would like this. It's serendipitous.
Yeah, it's very serendipitous. It's there's a lot of what is MSW that is serendipitous. Like, when we look through it, and I'm like, I'm connected to that person and have been for so many years, and it's so funny. Like, John's going pretty wild on TikTok right now. And a couple of my friends from college are like, I'm following this guy, Nurse Doza. And I'm like, oh yeah, I work with him. And they're like,
hilarious.
Really? I'm like, yeah, he's the founder of the company I work for. So it's just so wild how it always comes back around. And like, people that, my best friend has the best story of this. Her and her husband have been together for 6 years or so now. He's best friends with my brother, who, granted, my brother is 5 years younger than me. We would not have been hanging out at any one point or another. And so he's a couple years younger than her. And she's like, yeah, there are literal pictures of us at parties back to back to each other where we did not meet.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they finally met, and now they're together, and they have 2 boys, and it's just, he's amazing. But it's one of those things where the serendipitous thing, it's like you meet when you're meant to meet and things happen in their own timeline. You can speed it up a little bit, but it's that same idea of take the chance. You never know what'll come from it.
When you first signed on, when you were like, yeah, I'm going to work with MSW, what did you hope for it? Like, what did you see the future becoming? Because it changes over time.
Yeah,
so
it's changed for sure. So what I saw the future being is, for me, it's the helping people. It's the getting the people stories. Like, I love money as much as the next person and all of that. Like you said, healthcare is about how much money we can make for a lot of people. But ultimately, it came down to being able to help more people, whether that's with their health journey or by creating more jobs in a field where people could be passionate about where they are. You know, we've had this conversation and I'm like, I would love to do less and have the people that want to do it and just support them in like the ways that they need, you know?
Yeah, because that's you. Like at the end of the day, I look at it like that's you learning. Like us stepping into the next phase is us learning how to help other people get what they want. And then those types of people are looking to grow skills to say like, hey, I did XYZ. We've already done XYZ. It's like you talk about a festival. It's like we've ran a festival. So the next time around, like I don't want to run the festival. I want to enjoy the festival.
Yeah.
Like
I want to remember the month before and the month after the festival because I'm not in, you know.
It's bringing people on board that believe in the mission of the ship and then giving them what they want. And I think it's such an enlightening thing because when you come into business, we only see the corporate side or what we saw in school, and it's kind of like cogs in a wheel. It's not, at the end of the day, what I feel like we have is you realize how different we all are and how different of lives we all are living. But at the end of the day, we have a core mission that's rooted in the same thing. And a lot of people, again, going back to the divergent thought, where people are going away from debating and being open-minded, and they're solely going into it's my way or the highway. One of the things at MSW that I've really respected from the get-go is the ability to bring people into a room that necessarily, when you are going to these different spaces, wouldn't be the first people you would consider to be hanging out.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear you talk about your past because how you were involved in all those different things matches my story, where I was a soccer player, I was an engineer, I was in a fraternity. I did a bunch of different things. And then if you talk to Baldo and Doza and Yash, we all kind of fit that mold. And the reason that I'm saying this and speaking this is anybody that's listening on the other end, one of the things I wanted to convey on this podcast and one of the major themes that I want to put out there in the world is that being a jack of all trades is not only okay, you should strive to do it if that's your strength. And everyone on our team, it's now we're realizing, okay, we need to like hire people that aren't jack of all trades. But I wanted to talk about that specific lingo because I've seen it from you and I've seen it from the rest of our team and anybody listening. One of the things that I've had conflict with over my life is people try to put me in a bucket and say, this is what you need to be doing, rather than seeing the whole painting that I'm trying to portray. And it's really like, I like to do a little bit of a lot, and that's my skill, and I need to be put somewhere where that skill is then utilized. So for you, how have you strengthened that skill to be a jack of all trades?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I actually really like that question. So,
there's not a lot of people to follow. That's why
it's one of those things where, you know, I come back to my family, but I've had this discussion with my father, and he is he thinks very similarly in this way of like, well, why would I want to be pigeonholed? I'll get bored as fuck after 5 years. He's like, if you don't, and you know, my grandpa, he's like, if I'm not learning, I might as well die, which is literally something my grandfather said to me when I was 8 years old, because that's my family. They're very straight up and will tell you how it is. Which you'll learn that anyone who's worked with me knows I'm like that too. But for me, it's like boredom and no, it's not resentment. Apathy is like when you get to the point where you're apathetic. it's like worse than disliking something. It's like you just don't care anymore. So for me, being a jack of all trades,
It's like soulless.
yeah, I'm never bored. I'm always excited for the next thing. And, there's those moments like after the event where I was like, what am I going to do next? I mean, obviously I have my day to day. I make sure everyone's paid. I do all the back end type stuff. I go in and check in the clinic and talk to people and help where help is needed. But now we're focusing into MSW Nutrition, which is the supplement company that is also that kind of came out of the lounge a few years after it started, because we found that we really wanted to have the best quality of product and to be able to really be behind what we were suggesting to people. Well, John and Baldo did. I came in after, but it's ours. Anyone who works with us knows that it is theirs once they work with us, and they should get it out to as many people as they can. So for me, it's that you have to keep evolving. Like Baldo said one time, Baldo Garza, the other founder, he's like, I get to create what I do. I will never be bored. And in order to do that, you have to be a jack of all trades, and you have to kind of keep learning. And, if you'd asked me 10 years ago if I would be planning a 3-day long health festival, I probably would have laughed at you and been like, what? I mean, granted, there were other reasons for that, but yeah, definitely one of those things. And, being the only woman planning it in our group. And this is something I want to put out there, for any female that's listening. Don't be afraid to stand toe to toe with your male coworkers, because they will respect you if you get shit done. And it's just such a cool thing to learn, because 20 years ago when I was in high school, I would have never thought I'd be a COO of a company. So it's just picking those choices, because one choice can make things different. If I'd said, no, I don't want to work full time for them, who knows where I would have been.
And that's where I want to kind of dig into. This has been a great conversation. We've gone in so many different directions, but ultimately the theme was to show jack of all trades, and how, one, in the beginning, you're talking about traveling and the things that you need while you're doing that, the courage, the confidence, also the awareness to understand what you need to know, like what risks are willing to take, or like, okay, we're willing to take to go into the forest, but definitely have bear spray when you get to the forest,
yes.
right? So
highly suggest bear spray if you're in Montana or Wyoming.
yeah, but that also creates a problem in the business world, which I've seen, which is because we do tend to be planners, and we want to be proactive with planning and preventing risk. That's the normal person does want to prevent risk, too much so. Where to the point where like they can't see, like, maybe if I take this job, which I don't really know exactly what it's going to be, it could lead to that COO position. Did you think that you'd be sitting here? Like, I have this saying that I literally, my buddy Hamza called me yesterday. He is crushing it. He was my first intern with Thrive.
Yeah.
And I told him this one day. I was like, he asked me if I knew where I'd be where I was at. And I was like, I didn't know I'd be here, but I knew I'd be here. I didn't know how else to explain it. And then he was calling me yesterday. He's like, this is where I knew I'd be, just by the people I've been hanging around and learning from. But I didn't know I'd be here right now. And I feel like entrepreneurship is beautiful like that, because it happens almost for everybody, and it's happened for you clearly. And that's where the jack of all trades thing, if you're listening to this, you can't necessarily understand what's down the line unless you give it your all today. So that's where, when you first started, what did your day-to-day look like then versus now?
So at MSW?
Yes.
So when I first started, I was just working the desk. So I was ringing in things, helping John with, we didn't have a nurse. It was just me, John, and Baldo. Baldo was working. We didn't have you or Yash yet. So Baldo was working on the podcast, and Allison. Allison was with us, but she did all the marketing. So we just let her run wild with that. When I started, I just worked the desk. I was just doing the day-to-day transactions, clearing all of that. Eventually took over helping with financials. And then, we had the insanity that was COVID, and it definitely gave us the room to be able to grow. But even without that, I think we would have grown leaps and bounds, just because we started adding the right people. So ultimately, when it comes down to it, you have to find the right people to work with and alongside, because some people will fit, some people won't. It's that puzzle piece idea. My puzzle piece looks insane. So finding those people that are on that same weird length is extremely hard. But if you'd asked me almost 3 years ago, because it would have been like early June, I think, is my 3 year with them, I would have probably told you no. I had no idea what it was going to turn into. I don't think I planned on it being full time. I liked that it was, or planned on it being long term. I liked that it was a 10 to 5. And at that point, I needed a little bit of stability. Now I'm like, okay, I'm going to work from home today because I like making my own schedule again. But at that point, I'd been kind of with the nonprofit working whatever I could. And it was just, yeah. So I like the way that you put, you knew you were going to be there, but you didn't know how. And you have to do it, be in the present, but know about the future in the past. Because if you worry too much about the future, anxiety goes insane. If you worry too much about the past, your depression goes insane. So you kind of have to find that like happy medium where you just kind of write it for the day.
You got to learn from the past and believe in the future.
Yep.
And
that's a good way to put that.
That's something that I think all of us there represent. And it's not to say that we all have our bad days. But the good thing is like none of us allow bad days turn into bad weeks, turn into bad months. And
no, it's momentary. And we talk to each other about it because that's one of the things that I think is one of the best things that have come out of this last few years is people are advocating for themselves and they're talking to their higher ups and being honest and being like, this is what I need to perform at my best. Because ultimately you have to be healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, all of the Lees, however many there are now. There was like 7 when I learned them originally. I think there's like 12 now. Don't hold me to that. And if you're not healthy in one section, something's going to suffer. So it's really cool that we all are able to talk to each other and be like, hey, I need a few days. I'm going to figure it out. But we also get our shit done and we make sure everything is going the way it should.
Yeah. Expectation management. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've learned over the years is just get people that are clear on the expectation management and like who does what by when. That's something we learned from Tan on his episode. And I think that's the thing that we've been getting better and better and better at. And it doesn't stem from doing more. That's another thing is like, it stems from doing less and figuring out what your strength is. And then having that person just like really step into their power. So I love where we're going and what we're going to achieve and the amount of people we're going to impact. But I'd love to kind of get towards wrapping up this conversation with allowing you to speak about kind of your retreat that's coming up and then anything else that you're working on. We just talked about MSW, but if there's anything on the side that you want to mention, somebody else listening out there, they can either go on your retreat or they could sign up for one of your yoga classes. Feel free to use this space to kind of talk more about what Erin's doing on the side and however you want to flow with that. Go ahead.
Awesome. So yeah, I do have a retreat coming up February 11th through 18th. It's in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I still have 3 spots open. I know this will come out pretty close to that. Flights are relatively still affordable, especially if you're in a big city. But yeah, if you want to reach out about that, you can reach out to me on Instagram. It's Wanderin, WANDERINDAMM. So wanderindamm. Wand in my name. But yeah, I also teach yoga and have done teacher trainings alongside my business partner who's up in South Dakota, and she's amazing. She's still doing 2 or 3 a year. She does a lot of sound bowl healing, but I primarily have focused in the last few years on group classes and just teaching at the YMCA. And I've worked in and out of YMCAs since I was 18, so half my life at this point. And it's just pretty cool. So if you're a Y member, you can come to my classes. I do.
Which Y do you teach at?
I'm at North on Tuesday and Thursdays, which I actually taught a class right before this from 9:30 to 10:30. And then East, which is kind of by Walnut Creek in Austin, Texas, if you're listening in Austin. If you're not in Austin, I'm sorry. I don't do anything online. Filming myself is weird. I'm like, there's a
Have you ever
camera.
done that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did it when the pandemic started. I actually taught like daily classes on the In the Weeds group, which is the service industry group in Austin. So to a group of like 18,000 people, which it might have been bigger than that at that point. And I would just like set up my little Facebook and turn it on and teach a 30-minute class. And it was cool. I was giving back. I didn't charge for it. I mean, I would have the if you want to
Yeah,
Venmo me.
it's not scary at all. It's just,
I just
you
don't
don't
like
get the feeling.
Yeah, it's not the same as the 27 people I had in class this morning. And, I'm like, I need to go shower. And they all want to ask questions and things like that. So I was a few minutes late, but it was cool. So yeah, if you want to find out more about yoga, travel, all of that, following me on Instagram is really the way to go. You can find me on Facebook, but I don't really use it. I think I have a TikTok, but I have no idea what my name is. But Instagram's where I post a lot of my yoga, and it's primarily travel stuff right now because I haven't been doing much with yoga, but I do have a teacher training. So I can teach teachers, which is pretty cool. 200 hour. And I did one cohort, and like I said, my business partner is still doing it.
Before I get into my wrap up questions, why yoga? What out of all the modalities?
I fell into it is the best answer for that. So I had taken it in high school when I had started my practice in high school when I injured myself pretty bad. I had a stress fracture in my foot. I was a runner, all of that stuff. So I was doing yoga and aqua running. And then I continued to practice yoga through college, all of that. 2012, I was taking a class with a teacher at a small fitness studio in my hometown, and he passed away. And I was certified as an ACSM, whatever the heck it was called at the time. It's been changed like 4 times. So I don't even know what the actual term is now. I think it's exercise physiologist now. It was health fitness specialist. I like certifications. They're fun. And they asked me if I'd take over his class. So I took over it, taught for about a year, decided to go do my teacher training, did a month in Costa Rica, and just has bloomed since then. Everything just kind of went through that. The universe said, do this. And I did.
And you listened.
I did. Yeah. And I still teach. Like I said, maybe someday I'll do another teacher training. And this is probably going to be my last retreat for a little bit. So if you really want to go on a retreat with me, got to go on this one. But it's February 11th through 18th, Chiang Mai, Thailand. We're going to hang out with elephants and monks and
amazing.
Do some really cool stuff. It's a really small group. So if you go, you'll get to hang with me a lot. And then, yeah, that's kind of what I got going on. Amazing. I keep being like, I'm not going to plan more trips. And then my best friend's like, let's go see Zach Bryan at Red Rocks. And I'm like, okay, let's see if we can get tickets. And then the trip in July. Did you get tickets? It's a lottery, and we won't know till February 10th. Okay. So we applied for there, Houston, and Worcester. Am I saying that right?
Worcester?
Worcester, Massachusetts. Yeah. So we did the 3. Really want to go to Red Rocks. So Zach Bryan, if you hear this, no, I'm kidding. If Zach Bryan is listening to Thrive on Life,
we're doing something right. Put it in the universe. But we're getting into last little section here. Last question I always ask everybody is, if I were to ask you to define thriving, what does it mean to you? Doing
what you love and being really healthy while doing it. So feeling good and having fun, I guess, is the way to go. Because what I love, what you love, what everyone else loves is different. But if you can do it and you can have fun, or if you can have fun and feel good while doing it, and I guess being around really cool people is thriving as well.
Yeah, it's being healthy, having fun, and doing it with people that you love.
There we go.
I love that.
I said that with a lot more words.
Hey, I have a lot of practice. So.
He's done this a few times.
Yeah, 200. What's this? 230. It will be 235. So
damn, I didn't get 269. I'm sad.
Not this time. Maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming to this conversation. Yeah. Really enjoyed it. At the end of every conversation, I kind of highlight like what my favorite part was. And for this one, it was really just the be weird part. It was really like something I look up to for you own every room that you go into, and you're not ashamed to do that. And it really, in a world where we're basically teaching people the opposite, whether it's online or in person, we're teaching people to be the same. And I don't like that. And I want more people to be inspired by people like Erin, yourself, who are just doing their thing and doing what they love to do and doing it with people that they love. And that's really what life is all about. And we need more people doing that. That's where the thriving happens. So I love that. Thank you again for coming here today. I look forward to future conversations. This is CJ Finley with the Thrive on Life podcast. Best thing that you can do for us. If you love this episode, share it. Erin's dad, please listen to it. Share this episode. Give us that 5-star rating and review, and I'll talk to you next time. This is CJ. Thrive on, y'all.